Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back. I hope you guys didn't miss me too much being a week away on vacation, but I thought I'm back on a Monday, enough time to really film a power rankings video. So I thought, why not? Let's do it. One day late. Normally we do these Sunday, of course, after the games. Some Monday games are in the book, so I'm not really going to include too much of that on this video. So just kind of consider this after the weekend what the power rankings are, but I did say in the last video that you'd have to wait 2 weeks for one, so at least we don't have to do that. Hopefully that's okay with everyone, I'm sure it is. New number 30, and I can't say it anymore. We got the Baltimore Orioles. They went 0-4 against Tampa, 0-3 against the Braves. They set a record for multi-run losses. They're on, a 15-game losing streak now. That's like the third double-digit losing streak this season. Sorry, O's fans. Can't keep you out of the bottom any further. Number 29, got the Pittsburgh Pirates, 0-3 against the Dodgers, 2-1 against the Cardinals over the weekend. They had a pretty good series against the Cardinals, of course, playing a little bit of spoiler, but I think at this point I would consider them the worst team in the National League, so I'm going to put them number 29. Number 28, got the Texas Rangers. They went 0-3 against Seattle, and then 1-2 against Boston. A little tough series against Boston. They didn't look anything too special. At the same time, they're still in the bottom 3 of the league. I think these are pretty, you could maybe rearrange a couple of these, but Texas hasn't done too much to surprise you. Arizona, number 27, 3-0 against Philly, and 1-2 against Colorado. 3-0 against Philly is pretty important because they're playing big spoiler. They're starting to showcase that really when they were in the bottom earlier in the season, they were having a rough run. They're not nearly the bottom of the league. They have a good rotation. They have some good hitters. They can compete on a given night. So I'm going to give them number 27, maybe potentially moving up in the future. Number 26, just free falling ever since the trade deadline. We got the Chicago Cubs. They did beat the Reds in a series, playing a big spoiler. Reds missed a chance there, 2-1 there. But then they went 0-3 against Kansas City. I think we're all safe to say that the Cubs pretty much packed it in at the trade deadline, we're sure. They were as high as the second row at one point in the season, but it all came crashing down really, really quickly. 25. Got the Miami Marlins. They went 0-3 against Atlanta and then got swept in 4 games against the Reds. Rough outing for them this week. And they're kind of falling too. We could maybe start seeing them fall in Arizona. I could see them move it up a couple spots over these two teams in the coming weeks, if not by next week. So keep your eye out for that. But we got the bottom row here. Pretty much the worst teams in the MLB. Number 24, not too far ahead of them, we got the Washington Nationals. They had a good time spoiling Toronto, beating them in both games in the midweek before they lost over the weekend against Milwaukee. A much better team, of course, than them, but they were playing spoiler and they were looking good in their series against Toronto, putting up some offensive numbers, which pretty much is what Washington's going to have to do going forward. 23, we got the Angels. They swept Detroit at 3-0, but then they answered that immediately by getting swept by the Indians. So we haven't seen them really get past 500 all season. We don't probably see them that happening. They're pretty far out of the playoff race. The West got 3 teams ahead of them, a bunch of teams ahead of them in the wild card. Pretty much can count them out at this point. 22, we got Colorado Rockies. They had a good week. They swept the Padres, completely taking advantage of them while they're down, and then they won against Arizona over the weekend. I believe they're playing another game today on Monday. Last I looked, they were tied 5-5 about halfway through the game or so. So they've been looking good, and at the very least, I think these teams are starting to look at they're bad teams, not going to make the playoffs, obviously, but they're going to give a lot of teams a run for their money, especially when their aces are on the mound. Next up, we got the Minnesota Twins, 2-1 against Cleveland before the Yankees rolled in. Everyone getting in the way. The Yankees is getting beat. The Yankees swept them. But overall, they're turning things around. They are last in the division, of course. But there's that stretch they had very terribly. I think on a given night, though, you match them against any of the teams below them. And I'm going to pick them to win, so that's why I got them 21. Number 20, Kansas City Royals. 3-1 against Houston early in the week, and then they swept the Cubs on the weekend. Very good week for the Royals. If they didn't have that stretch for a while where they just looked atrocious, they'd probably be a little bit more in the conversation of being in the middling teams, maybe competing for wild cards. But I know at the beginning of the season there was a lot of momentum behind the Royals. It fell off, obviously. Their rotation never really got it going. But this past week, they showed that the good side of their team, and there's a lot of potential of this team moving forward. So number 20, I think, is a good spot for them right now. Number 19, just free falling. We got the New York Mets, 1-2 against San Fran, 1-3 against the Dodgers. Just against top teams, they've been getting smashed. We've seen them go from division leaders to way falling out of the race, and I don't see it getting much better for them going forward. Ever since they traded for Baez at the deadline, they've been not a good team, and even before that, they've been struggling. Of course, with DeGrom not pitching for a long time, that really hurts. A lot of the other injuries they've dealt with all season. At one point, they were very seriously playoff contenders, but to me at this point, there's a lot going on there, and they're out of the race, at least falling way behind. Number 18, we got the Detroit Tigers. 0-3 against the Angels earlier in the week, but then they spoiled the Blue Jays over the weekend at home. Blue Jays have looked good since returning to Toronto, but they won 2 games against them in extras to take that series 2-1. I think this is the first time all season Detroit's in the 3rd row, so they're on the way up, and I've talked about them a lot this season. I wanted to give them a little bit of credit that they've had a good season so far. That week specifically, maybe not their best, but being able to compete with Toronto in the 3 games, I think, gives them a lot of confidence going forward as a team, of course. Number 17, Cleveland Indians, 1-2 against Minnesota, sweeping the Angels. We know they're pretty much out of the playoff race, and once we start getting to the teams ahead, they're all technically in the playoff race. So Cleveland's a little bit out. They've had good weeks. They've also had bad weeks, but on most given weeks, they're 500 team, and that's going to land them pretty much dead center of the league. Number 16, we got the Toronto Blue Jays, 0-2 against Washington, 1-2 against Detroit. This was supposed to be a week for the Jays to pick up some wins, make up some ground in the playoff race, and they just didn't deliver. Of course, they're still in the playoff hunt. They're, 4 games out? They did beat the White Sox today, so that's going to be a big win, but they have a lot to make up. They probably have to play close to 700 baseball the rest of the season if they're going to sneak in. 16 right dead in the center. It sucks because they're such a great run differential team, but they just can't find the wins when they need to. Number 15, we got the Philadelphia Phillies. They got swept by the Diamondbacks, which really stopped them from moving up any further. 0-3 early in the week. They did beat the Padres, though, 2-1. Again, Padres are a team that's slowly falling out of the race, and the Phillies, they were the division leaders for a quick point in time, but it's quickly fallen behind the Braves at this point. I think they're going to be a lot of ground for them to make up. 14, we got the Cardinals. 1-2 against Milwaukee, 1-2 against Pittsburgh. Not a winning week, but they're sticking around. They're picking up a couple wins, even on a bad week. And at the end of the day, they're in the playoff race, something like 4 games out. They get, again, all these teams are going to have to go on heaters if they're going to make a shot at the playoffs, but we got to give them credit. They are in the race at the very least. 13, we got the Seattle Mariners. They started the week awesome, sweeping the Rangers. And then they went into Houston, and we thought, if they come out of the series with a win, they're really making a run at the playoffs. But they did lose 1 game. They did steal on the Sunday. But the 2 first games against Houston really laid the bat on them, so showed kind of their weakness as a team. I see them as a playoff team looking out at this point, but they're better than the Jays. They've beaten them both series this week. They're probably better shot at making the playoffs than these 2. So I got to say number 13 at this point. Obviously, the Mariners have really surprised this season. Number 12, I think the lowest they've been all season. 0-3 against Colorado, 1-2 against Philly. At the end of the day, they did create a little bit of a lead in the wild card race for a while, so they haven't fallen into this 3rd row yet. They're very much 1 game back from Cincinnati, I believe, at this point. They're in the run, but they're free falling at this point. They got to find something to stop the bleeding. I believe Darvish is now out for at least a little while. And if it wasn't for Tatis, who knows where this team would be. Number 12, I think, is being optimistic, but I got to give them credit. They did build some wins early in the season to allow them to have this kind of stumble. Number 11, they're surging. Cincinnati Reds, 1-2 against the Cubs. So they missed a chance to win a series against the Cubs with the lowly clubs, but they answered immediately right back with a sweep over the weekend of the Marlins. So they have an easy schedule this week. We're going to see how they handle now that the pressure is going to be on them to win games. They were chasing before, and now they're the teams being chased. Of course, they can still move up in the wild card. But it's going to be pretty hard because it's pretty much the Dodgers ahead of them in that, and Milwaukee ahead of them in the division. Probably this is the best they're going to get in the standings. Number 10, we got the Oakland A's. 1-3 against the White Sox, 1-2 against San Fran. They can't beat the teams that are ahead of them, and they're just not making up ground. But they're in the hunt. They're, of course, in that wild card race. They're in that one spot. I believe actually they've fallen out of the spot. I take that back. They've fallen out. They're one game or half a game out of that wild card, number 10. Oh, they got a lot of work to do. And with Chris Bassett going down this week, Cy Young candidate possibly out. Number 9, we got the Red Sox losing a very big series to the Yankees. 0-3 really, really hurts, but they did answer back with a series win against Texas, so you got to give them that. They're in the playoffs. They have a solid team. Sale's back, so they got a lot of confidence with that. Number 9, I think, is fair, but it could go either way. They could climb, they could fall. It's going to depend these next couple weeks for the Red Sox. Number 8, one of the hottest teams, of course, in the league right now, I believe. They're on a 9-game winning streak, something like that. 3-0 against the Marlins, 3-0 against the Orioles, 2 bottom-tier teams, of course, picking up wins, but they also won last week. And I believe they're playing today and they won, or no, actually they played the Yankees and they lost. So that streak's going to be coming to an end. But of course, they've created a pretty big separation between them and Philadelphia. I like their chances of making the playoffs at this point, and what can you say? They've answered the bell when Acuna went down. Pitching has not been great, but they're finding the time to win when it matters most. Number 7, Houston Astros. They've fallen a little bit. They went 1-3 against KC before beating Seattle over the weekend, but there's some concerns there. They've fallen below 600, and they're just not the powerhouse team that they were at one point earlier in the season. I can't quite put my finger on it, but that's where I got them, number 7. We're going to get into this top row, and this is, of course, where the World Series contenders, top 6 teams in the league really are. Before we do, go down there, subscribe to the channel. We do these every week, normally on a Sunday, this day on a Monday. We also do Wake Up with Baseball every morning, a live stream where I go over the games the night before. So make sure you subscribe, and don't forget to hit that like button before we do this. Number 6, we got the New York Yankees. They had an interesting week. They started against the Angels, they won. They swept Boston, and then they swept Minnesota over the weekend. The Yankees are now, I think, a little 10-game winning streak today because they also beat Atlanta today. They're just super hot. Probably now the hottest team in MLB. Over the past 2 months, they've been on fire. And what can you say? They added the deadline with Rizzo. Their pitching's been on point. They have Garrett Cole, Cy Young candidate. I think at the end of the day, they're very much a contender. And the beginning of the season, a little bit of a fluke. Maybe took some time to get going, but now they're going. They're in a wild card spot. They have a shot at the division. A little bit of a behind, but they do have a shot. And at the end of the day, wild card game, Garrett Cole. Got to be pretty happy about that. Number 5. Got the White Sox, 3-1 against Oakland, really playing spoiler, giving Oakland a chance. But then they lost over the weekend against Tampa Bay, a team that's probably ahead of them in the power rankings, and by probably, we know they are. But the White Sox, they have the division locked up at this point. So, I got to give them a lot of credit. They're going to be in the playoffs at number 5. Number 4, Milwaukee Brewers, 2-1 against St. Louis, 2-1 against Washington. Just continue to win series. Series after series, Milwaukee wins. They have their rotation. The bats are starting to be batty. They're a very good team, very much a contender, going to win the division. Not much else I can say about them there. Number 3, Tampa Bay Rays. 4-0 against Baltimore, just handled Baltimore that week. And then they walked in and beat the White Sox 2-1. Big series after losing them, I believe, earlier in the season in a series. They answered the bell. They have a big lead in the division, probably the top team in the AL. I think number 3 is very good for the Tampa Bay Rays. And this is going to stay the same as the week before. We have the LA Dodgers at number 2, 3-0 against Pittsburgh, 3-1 against the Mets. They're pretty hot. Like, what can you say? They're a very good team on paper. They're starting to win the games. And when we have number 1, the Giants, 2-1 against the Mets, 2-1 against Oakland. They still have the lead in the division, and they've been number 1 now for a little while. I haven't been given that reason to dethrone them. Of course, the Dodgers are right on their tail. And this week, any 500 week could really dethrone San Fran from the division, from the power rankings, and knock them down in that wild card spot, which I think everybody at this point has been just waiting for it to happen. So will it happen? You let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think of these power rankings. Where should we change things up, etc., etc. It feels good to be back. Hope you guys had a great week without me and you checked out those Cy Young videos I made. If not, go back and check those out, and we'll see you guys for the next video. Thanks for watching.